Hello, welcome to Bits in Biology. My name's Liz, and in this video, I'm going to talk about some of the games I played in December 2024. In December, I had 59 total plays from 42 different games. 10 of those 42 games were new to me, and in descending order of how much I enjoyed them, they were Brass Birmingham, Inventions, Evolution of Ideas, The Search for Lost Species, Gloomhaven, Buttons and Bugs, Trekking the National Parks, 3rd edition, not entirely new because I have played 2nd edition, but I'll talk about that when I get there. Pocket Master Builder, Super Skill Pinball Holiday Edition, Omen, A Reign of War, Splitter, 12 Days of Christmas, and Terra Nova. 9 of those 42 games were relevant to the channel, so had science or animal or biology theme, nature theme, and 2 of those were new to me. And so that was Search for Lost Species and Trekking the National Parks, 3rd edition, which has a big asterisk next to it about being new. But anyway, if you want to see all of the games that I played in December, you can visit my profile page on Board Game Geek. And if you are watching this through the month of January and a little bit into February, you can just scroll down to the bottom of my profile page and I'll have them all listed there in descending ranked order. If you're watching this farther into the future, there is a link somewhere on the page, I can't remember where you can actually look at all of my logged plays. And for those of you who are into solo gaming, I tend to make a note of when I play games solo. So if you're ever curious about games that I'm rating or ranking or talking about, how many times I've played them, that sort of thing, that's all public information, with one caveat. I didn't start recording my plays until January of 2022. So for games that we have owned longer than that, and there's, some examples would be Ticket to Ride or Splendor or Carcassonne, some of the classics, Pandemic. Certainly the number of plays recorded on Board Game Geek is not reflective of how many times we've played those. Anyway, back to our summary statistics. If you compare my December plays to November, in November I had 65 plays of 33 different games, 7 of which were new to me, and so I was able to play quite a bit. Well, interestingly, I played a greater number of games in December, but had fewer total plays. Now, part of that is a factor of the fact that I was playing some heavier games, and so we'll talk about that. So those take a lot longer. They take a while to learn. I played more new games in December, and so that does take a bit of time to learn. As usual, I will have timestamps in the description in case you want to skip around. All right, before we get started, I just want to make a quick plug for our Discord community. It is small but growing, very friendly, fun people. I'm hoping to encourage a community of gamers who enjoy nature and science-themed games or anything relevant to that, or just like being out in nature, really, or maybe you teach science or anything like that. We don't only talk about channel relevant games in the Discord, we talk about all sorts of games. We welcome everybody. So it is free. There is a link to our Discord down in the description, and I hope you will come and join us. All right, let's go on to the top 10 games I played in December 2024. So this top 10 list is out of all of the games I played in December, and I do this for a couple of reasons. One, it gives me a chance to talk about some of the games that I really enjoy that are not necessarily channel relevant. It also gives you a little more context for games that I enjoy and, how I think about games, how I review games, that sort of thing. What sorts of things in games I enjoy, mechanisms and that sort of thing. So that's why I talk about these games. 2 of the top 10 games that I played in December were new to me, and 3, kind of 4-ish, I'm going to ask your opinion on this, of the top 10 are channel relevant. So I'll mention where those are in the ranking, but I'll talk about those games when I talk about the channel relevant games. So these are games with a nature, science, or wildlife, animal theme. Okay, at number 10, we have Welcome to Your Perfect Home. This is actually listed on Board Game Geek as Welcome to, and that has always kind of bugged me because on the box it says Welcome to Your Perfect Home. So I'm not sure why that last part got dropped off, but there you have it. Rant over. We played this one time in December. We actually played the winter edition, so this has a different player sheet and adds some interesting bonus cards to it. We've played it 12 times total. This is a flip and write pattern building game, a little bit puzzly. Plays it says 1 to 100 players on the box, but I think that's just because they include 100 sheets in the box. It can really play 1 to any number of players. Plays in about 25 minutes. Actually, I've not yet played this one solo. I have played Welcome to the Moon solo. That's really fun. This has an average Board Game Geek weight of 1.84, an average rating of 7.5, and my rating of it is an 8.4. We all really enjoy this game. This is one of my mom's favorite games. She's always really happy when she comes up for game night and this is on the table set up. So what you're doing here, this is a flip and write, like I said, a flip and write pattern building game, but everybody has a player sheet with 3 different rows with houses on them. Some of them will have swimming pools. And what you are trying to do is each turn you are given a choice of 3 card combinations. One of the cards will be a number, the other will be a symbol or a picture. And the numbers go from, I think, 1 to 15, and the pictures are things like a park or a fence or a swimming pool, and then there's some other ones that require a little bit more explanation I'm not going to get into. But each turn you're going to pick one of those combinations of cards, so the number and the symbol. You can't mix and match. You have to go with the ones that are paired up. And you will fill in the numbers on your sheet, and you can only go in ascending order in each row. Now you can skip numbers, but you can only go in ascending order. And then what you're trying to do, in addition to going in ascending numerical order, is to put fences in particular places to fulfill bonuses. So you're trying to segment up your neighborhoods into little chunks. You're hoping you get swimming pools with the right numbers in the right order, and trying to get enough parks that will score you lots of bonus points on each row. And it's really fun, very family friendly, new gamer friendly game that has everybody's playing at the same time. Now, this is one of those ones that could be called multiplayer solitaire. There's nothing you can do to interfere with somebody else's player sheet. So if you're not a fan of multiplayer solitaire games, then this might not be the game for you, but we find it to be a lot of fun. And anyway, that is number 10, Welcome to Your Perfect Home. At number 9, all the way on the other end of the weight rating system, is Inventions Evolution of Ideas. This is a much heavier game. We played this 3 times in December. I've played it 3 times total. I haven't had a chance to get it back to the table yet in January. I played it twice with my partner and 1 time solo. This is a worker placement game. It's categorized as a civilization game. I'll hopefully remember to come back and tell a funny story about that here in a moment. Anyway, it plays 1 to 4 players in 60 to 150 minutes. It has an average Board Game Geek weight of 4.67. That is a scale from 1 to 5. So definitely a heavier game. Now keep in mind this was published in 2024, so I don't know, I didn't look up how many people have put their, so the way the average weights are determined on Board Game Geek, I'm having a hard time talking today, this does not bode well. But anyway, the way the average weights are calculated on Board Game Geek is you can go in there as a user and give your opinion on that. So you can, the only thing I don't like is you can only choose a whole number from 1 to 5. So you can't choose like 4.3. So for this one, some people are picking 4, some people are picking 5. I do remember looking at this and some people put a 1 or a 2, and I can't imagine anybody thinks this is a light game. The only thing I can think of is they're trying to balance out the 5s. Because while it is a complex game, I don't want to downplay the complexity. This is a brain burner. Anyway, an average weight on Board Game Geek of 4.67, has an average rating right now on Board Game Geek of 8.1. My rating of it right now is an 8.5. That is likely to go up. But I've only played it 3 times. This is a Vital Lacerda game. They have their own reputation as being quite heavy, even though Vital Lacerda will actually tell you, no, my games are very simple. And it is true that there are limited things you are doing in this game. So this is a game where everybody has a player board that you're adding tiles to, and you're also collecting some cards of different inventions. So the cards in this game are different inventions over the course of human history, all the way from the Stone Age to present day computer age time. and you're working through, I think the way the cards are arranged, I can't remember if it's 4 or 5, A, B, C, D, E, F, 6 eras, something like that anyway, so that the invention cards, they're in a single stack, and within each of those eras, the cards are, shuffled and mixed up, but they're stacked in such a way that the oldest inventions will be the first ones you run across, and the newer, sort of more modern day inventions will be towards the bottom of the stack. And what you're doing on your turn is placing your worker, which is a pillar, the pillars of knowledge, into one of 8 worker placement spots. So the way that works is there are rows. Each row, which is called a forum, has 2 different worker placement spots that are related to each other. You can only go into each row 1 time each round, and you have 3 different workers you're placing. And so you will choose 3 different actions. The fun part about this game is once you choose one action, there are opportunities to chain other actions to it. And as you progress through the game, you increase your ability to chain additional actions by collecting these chaining tokens. The game centers around a few different key mechanisms, and that is presenting an idea, so something like the wheel or paper, or I don't remember seeing electricity, so maybe light bulb? I can't remember. Anyway, once that idea has been proposed, then somebody, maybe you, maybe somebody else, can come along and invent it. Once it's been invented, it can be innovated. Now, this is a really interesting sort of thematic touch, and that is if you're the person who invented it, you can't also be the person who innovates on it, because presumably you have already sort of reached the bounds of your knowledge and you are not going to make that thing better. You did the best you could. Somebody else can come along and make that invention better. The innovation part is optional. Not all inventions will be innovated on, but they can all then be shared. And so the 3 things that sort of in the life of a card in this game are that the card would be played as it's presented as an idea, then it can be invented, then it can be shared. Maybe it gets innovated in there after being invented, before being shared. And depending on which of those actions you're doing around that card, you will get points, or you might collect cards, or be able to do additional bonus actions. And it's really interesting. Oh, I said I was going to tell a funny story. So Paul Grogan was recently talking about this. He did, if you've not played this, if you're playing this for the first time, Paul Grogan on the Gaming Rules channel does an excellent tutorial for this, the official, why can't I not talk today, the official how to play for this game. But he tells a funny story about how he mentioned to Vital Lacerda, the designer, you should do a civilization game. And Vital's like, I don't like conflict. He doesn't like doing games with conflict. And so a couple years later, Inventions, Evolution of Ideas comes out, and it is categorized as a civilization building game. There is no conflict, there's no wars, but you are creating these things, these inventions through human history. And so I really find the historical aspect of this fascinating. It's so fun to think about and to progress as you go through the game through these different inventions. Domestication of the horse, for some reason, sticks in my mind. Dog domestication is in there. I'm trying to think of some others. I'll flash some cards up on the screen right about now so you can see what some of those are. And so, like I said earlier, this is a game that actually does not have a lot of different things you can do. You are limited to 8 different actions, but within each round, you're taking 3 turns. On your turn, you might chain together several actions, and hopefully you will. That's how you're going to do well in this game. I haven't done well in this game yet. I can't remember what points I've reached, but when I looked at points that other people can reach in this game, we weren't there yet. With only 3 plays, you're not expected to be. I'll talk about another Vital Lacerda game when I talk about the channel relevant games, because I also played Weather Machine last month. I really enjoyed this game. My partner, not so much. It is a brain burner. It is a puzzle. It is an efficiency puzzle where you're trying to chain together actions in the most efficient way as you go through. You have limited number of turns in this game, a finite number of turns, and so you have to make the most of them if you want to do your best. It does play solo. I thankfully really enjoyed the solo mode for this, and the couple of things I want to say. First of all, I'll come back to the solo mode, but for the 2-player game, there is a dummy third player. And the purpose of that dummy player is to make the cards cycle more often. They don't block worker spaces, and they're very easy to control. Basically, it moves around the board. Where it ends up, it will either present an idea, invent an idea, share, or innovate. And those go in the opposite order. Very easy to run. It does not require any additional overhead to operate, but that is there in the 2-player game. In the solo game, you not only have that's Kronos is the dummy third player in the 2-player game. There's also Hephaestus in the solo game that does do a few extra things, and so the solo game AI does take a bit to run, but I downloaded from Board Game Geek. People always have in the files section these really nice player aids, and one of them was a solo player aid, which basically just walked you through it. Oh, Hephaestus is here. Here are the choices. So Hephaestus gets in your way on the worker placement spots a little bit. Well, it doesn't get in your way. It doesn't stop you from going anywhere, but if you go in the same place as Hephaestus, they're going to accumulate points. And so your goal is to beat their points. I can't remember if there was additional solo goals, but the solo game really does do a good job of, for you as the solo player, mimicking that multiplayer feeling, right? Anyway, a really fun game. That's Inventions, Evolution of Ideas. But again, if you are not into heavier games, I don't recommend this. Don't start here. This is not a game to start your gaming career. That seems weird. Anyway, you're gaming with. It is definitely a heavier game. I do want to say something about the art to give me an excuse to put up some beautiful pictures up on the screen. The art is by Ian O'Toole, a very well-known artist in the board game industry, and he has just done a fabulous job with the artwork for this game. We'll talk about him again when we talk about Weather Machine. Anyway, that was, what number was that? Number 9, Inventions, Evolution of Ideas. That'll probably move up in my estimation once I play it more often. Okay, what's next? Number 8, we have HYVE. This is a beehive simulation game that I will talk about when I talk about the channel relevant games. I've talked about this one before. I do have videos up on the channel. Number 7, Gingerbread House. We played this once in December, which is surprising. We usually play it a few more times around the holidays. We have played it 10 times total. This is a tile placement set collection game with contract fulfillment and pattern building. It plays 2 to 4 players in about 30 minutes. It has an average Board Game Geek weight of 1.85, so we have bounced back into the opposite direction from Inventions, Evolution of Ideas. So an average Board Game Geek weight of 1.85, an average rating of 7, and my rating of it is an 8.5. I really like the puzzly aspect of this game, and the theme is just really charming. Well, okay, it's a little dark, actually. Basically, you live in a gingerbread house. So I think the fairy tale goes that you're the witch, right, who lives in this gingerbread house. And you're really tired of all the fairy tale characters who are coming traipsing through the forest and eating bits off of your house. And so what you're doing in this game is luring them to your house, bringing them inside, luring them in with cookies that they enjoy. The game is a little tight-lipped on what happens to those characters once they get inside your house. So we don't try and think about that. But what you're doing in this game is each turn, so let me back up a little bit. You have a finite number of tiles. So there's a finite number of turns in this game. And you are laying tiles into a 4x4 grid. Each of the tiles has 2 things on it, so kind of like a domino looking thing. And you are covering up symbols to get things. So when you place a tile, you get the things you cover up. So those might be gingerbread cookies or stairways, or maybe you're luring characters to your gate before you actually lure them into your house with cookies, or you can trade gingerbread cookies for other cookies. And if you manage to cover up 2 of the same symbol, then you get 3 of those instead of just 2. So that's kind of a fun thing to try and puzzle together and plan for. When you manage to lure a character into your house by providing it with the right collection of cookie symbols, then you will get a wild tile that you can place on your board. So you're building up your board in layers. Once you complete a layer, you get to choose a bonus card from a finite number of bonus cards. Each player can collect at most 3 bonus cards, and usually you will get all 3 of them. And usually you'll have about 3 to 4 layers in your board. And that's what the stairways are for, to sort of help you balance out those layers, right? Anyway, just really fun, charming game, and designed by Phil Walker Harding, who's very well known for designing these family weight games that are interesting, a little bit puzzly, but not overly so. So my mom actually likes this game. I wouldn't say it's her favorite. It's got a few more things to think about that she would like. If we played it more often, she would probably like it more. She doesn't like it when we go long periods of time between playing a game. She likes to play it over and over a few times, which makes sense, but is in a little bit of a direct opposition to us liking variety. So we try to find a nice balance in there somewhere. Anyway, that was number 7, Gingerbread House. All right, I said we would talk about another Vital Lacerda game, and we will, but not right now. But at number 6, we have Weather Machine. So this is a channel relevant game. It's about a scientist who, it's a little whimsical, far-fetched, but it's about a scientist who is tinkering with the weather. And while he manages to make things good locally, this has bad effects in far-flung places. And so you're trying to fix that. So I'll talk more about that when I talk about the channel relevant games, but that is Weather Machine. At number 5, we have Clank, a deck building adventure. It's my partner's favorite game. We played this one time in December. We've played it 26 times total. We do have 2 expansions for it. So we played the Mummy's Curse expansion in December. Talk more about that. This is a deck building, push your luck, open drafting game with action points. It plays 2 to 4 players in 30 to 60 minutes. Probably closer to 60. Well, we play with 4 players, but probably closer to 60 minutes. Sometimes can push up to 90. It has an average Board Game Geek weight of 2.23, an average rating of 7.9, and my rating of it is a 9.2. I really enjoy this game. It has a lot of elements that we tend to really enjoy, which are deck building and push your luck. We love push your luck in this house. Open drafting, we tend to like open drafting. And the way it works is, well, I should say the premise of the game is that you are adventurers and you are dungeon diving. You're going down into the depths to find treasure. And there's a dragon down there that is not happy about you stealing their treasure. The goal of the game is to get down into the dungeon, steal an artifact, and make it up above ground before you run out of health points. And the way you're going to do that is that each turn you're going to draw 5 cards into your hand. Those cards will have different symbols on them. So they might have boots that allow you to move around the board. They'll have skill points that allow you to purchase additional cards to put in your deck. And swords are the other thing that they might have on them to allow you to avoid taking damage as you are exploring the dungeon, or to fight monsters and gain bonuses because of that. They might also have other effects on the card, such as healing you. They might have hearts that heal damage that you've taken. So the push your luck aspect of it is that the artifacts, there's plenty of artifacts to go around, and they're at various points in the dungeon. And the ones that are worth the most points are down deeper. And you might have to buy a key from the marketplace to get through locked doors to get to the most valuable artifacts. So our son and my partner love going for the most valuable artifacts, but that takes them deep, deep, deep into the dungeon and exposes them to the most potential damage. And they occasionally don't make it up. They don't make it out occasionally. They usually make it above ground where you can count your points, but they don't always make it out of the depths. Although sometimes our son has a habit of going down and getting out as quickly as possible, which puts different pressure. So every game is really different, even though it's the same board. The deck of cards is quite large, so you do get a variety of cards, but everybody starts with the same 10 cards. And As you are traveling through this dungeon, you might make noise, which will cause you to put some cubes into a bag, and then every so often a card comes out into the marketplace with a picture of a dragon on it, and the dragon attacks. You pull cubes out of the bag. Those go onto your health meter to take away, some of your health points. So you have a finite number of those, and you're trying to make it back out of the dungeon. Okay, I feel like I'm rambling now. We played the Mummy's Curse expansion in December, and so this has a different game board, and each of these game boards is double-sided, which is kind of fun, but it introduces sort of a somewhat different theme, a few extra cards. There's a mummy that travels around the board that introduces some other aspects to it, so more of an Egyptian theme. Some of the artwork in this one's pretty funny, and so that's when we played. My favorite one so far anyway, I cannot talk today. My favorite one is the Sunken Treasures expansion, where you're actually going underwater. But there's some underwater caves that you're swimming through, and it puts different restrictions on your movement in the dungeon, so that's kind of fun. But anyway, it's just really fun. The push your luck aspect and the deck building are my two favorite things in this game. I will say in January I will talk about this game a bunch more, because my partner's birthday is January 6th, and for his birthday this year I got him the rest of the expansions. Anyway, that was number 5, Clank, a deck building adventure. At number 4 is a channel relevant game about birds, and that is Wingspan. In fact, this is the game that has been credited with really starting it certainly wasn't the first nature themed game, but it was perhaps the first super popular outside of the gaming community nature themed game that really brought a lot of people into the hobby who have that sensibility, right? Love that artwork, love the idea of, the animals and everything else. Anyway, that's Wingspan. I'll talk about that when I talk about the channel relevant games. That was number 4. At number 3, we have Gutenberg. We played this one time in December. We've played it 4 times total. I haven't yet played this one solo, although it does play solo. This is a worker placement open drafting game with contract fulfillment that really plays in nicely to the theme. It plays 1 to 4 players in 1 to 2 hours. Has an average Board Game Geek weight of 2.73, an average rating of 7.3, and my rating of it is a 9.3. I really enjoy this game. I love the theme. So you are the owner of a printing house or a printing shop, workshop, or whatever, and you are collecting contracts to fulfill, where you will have to have different letters and different inks and other embellishments that you collect the ability to do on your player board. So everybody has their own player board, and this is a worker placement game. And one of the really fun things about this is each player has their own player screen, and behind that screen you have a track. And I think, it's either 6 or 8 different worker placement spots that you can go to, and everybody will have, I think it's somewhere in the ballpark of 9 to 11 little cubes that you're going to allocate to each of those particular actions. And whoever has the most, after these are all revealed simultaneously, whoever has the most for an action gets to go first for that action. And so the marketplace of contracts and inks, and there's gears that let you do bonus stuff, that marketplace changes every round. There's also a worker placement spot near the bottom that lets you do some, what do you want to call it, like necessary things that you need to build up, like get money or do, and you can also collect endgame bonuses. And so this whole dawn of the printing press theme is really fun. I wouldn't, would I call it a thematic game? It does give you this feeling of being a printing shop owner, because you're collecting these different letters and these different inks and this different thing, but you could be really collecting anything. But the artwork is really well done. The setting of it, this printing press, dawn of the printing press era, is really fun to think about. And I love that aspect of how you are claiming your turn order for each worker placement spot as you work your way down the board. And we just really enjoy this. I have not played this one solo yet. I really would like to play it solo. there's not enough time to play all the games. Anyway, that was number 3, Gutenberg. Number 2 is the game that is currently number 1 of all of the games on Board Game Geek, and that is Brass Birmingham. I finally got a chance to play this. I think it was a deal of the day or something a month or 2 ago on Board Game Geek. Game Nerds. Anyway, we played this twice in December, but we played it the last weekend in December. So this was one of our Saturday games where it's me and my partner and our son play a game on Saturday morning, then we play it again Saturday night. And we played in the last weekend in December, and we loved it so much that we played again the first weekend in January. So we'll talk about it again in the next month's vlog. This is an economic strategy game with hand management, has multi-use cards, which I love. The main idea around it is this network or route building, and it plays 2 to 4 players in 1 to 2 hours. Has an average Board Game Geek weight of 3.87, so it's a little bit heavier, but I wouldn't actually say it's that complex. I'll come back to that. It has an average rating on Board Game Geek of 8.6, and my rating of it right now is a 9.5. That may go up with repeated plays. So the idea here is you are working in the Industrial Revolution, and I guess you're maybe financing all of this. I'm not sure what your role is. If you're interested in some of the historical context of this game, the YouTube channel Heavy Cardboard has a how to play and a playthrough, but if you just listen to the how to play, now it's long, it's almost an hour long, but it's fascinating. I didn't feel like it was an hour. So the person who teaches it is somebody who grew up in this area of England where this game is set, and they talk about the historical context of this game. And so I'll come back to that in a minute, but even if you haven't played this game, it's a really interesting historical presentation, really well done. Anyway, back to the game. So you are dealt at the, so it's, okay, I can't talk today. It's played over 2 eras. One is the canal era, and then after that is the railroad era. And in both of those, you are building networks. You are placing tiles onto the board in the form of industries. It's not a tile laying game. These are going into particular places that are limiting where different industries can be placed. And so you are building the different things you can build in this game besides your network, your canals and your railroads are coal mines, iron works. Let's see, we call them boxes. I think they are manufactured goods, cotton mills, breweries, pottery. I think that's it. I think I got everything. I might have missed one thing. Anyway, your goal is to put those tiles out on the board and then sell them or somehow get them flipped over, because then you'll earn income. And you are working your way up 2 different tracks. One is the points track. Most of your points come at the end of each era, but you do get some points as you go through the eras. And you're also working your way up an income track. And you start out each era with a hand of, I think it's 8 cards, and there's a deck of cards that the size of which varies depending on the player count. And on your turn, except for your very first turn, you're going to play 2 cards. You get 2 actions. And so for each action, you're playing a card. So if you're going to put out a tile, you have to play a card that either matches the city you're playing the tile into or that matches the industry. If you're using an industry card, then your network of either canals or rails, depending on what era it is, has to be connected to that city if you're using the industry card. But if you're using a city card, you can build, your network doesn't have to be connected to that city. You can build, but the other actions don't require specific cards. So you can play any card to, for instance, take out a loan, or to lay down a canal or a rail. The really fun part to me about this game is the player interaction. And so it's a combination of getting in each other's way, but also benefiting each other, which is really interesting. So for instance, you might start out by playing a coal mine, right? And on that coal mine, there might be 3 or 4 cubes representing coal. And then somebody else does a manufactured good. I think those ones, well, we'll just say an ironworks, because I know those require coal to build. And so if there is coal on the board, they have to use that coal. And what's more, they have to use the closest coal. So it might not be their coal mine, it might be an opponent's coal mine. Once all those cubes are taken off the coal mine, that tile flips and now earns income for the owner of that tile. Same for the ironworks, and so other people will help you flip those cards. When you sell industries, so the manufactured goods, the cotton mills, or the pottery houses, when you sell those require beer. There's really interesting historical context for that, but I'll come back to that. And so if your network is connected to a brewery that is not yours, you can use that beer if there's beer on there. Your breweries don't have to be connected to your network. So sometimes you can hide beer in places on the map, and that's kind of fun. Anyway, that interaction, that sort of push and pull, negative, positive player interaction is super fun. Our first game, we played the shortened version. Mostly because we got a bit of a late start and our son had some plans. So we played the shortened version, which is just playing the canal era, which they recommend anyway for your first game if you don't want the full big experience. So they have some scoring tweaks if you're just playing that first era. So we played that, and after that first play, I wasn't entirely convinced that I understood why this game was number one. But after another play of it, and especially after 4 plays of it, I understand now. It really has everything to do with that push and pull, the negative, positive player interaction. So there are solo modes, or at least one solo mode that's fan-made on the Board Game Geek forums, but I'm not sure how that works, because to me the fun part is the player interaction. And so if you have played Brass Birmingham solo, if you've played one of those fan-made modes, first of all, tell us which one and tell us what you thought about it, because I'm really curious about the solo mode and how that can be fun, because probably I will want to play this game more often than my partner and my son. So I'd really love it if there's a good solo mode, but it's a really fun game. This is definitely staying in our collection for a while, and that is Brass Birmingham at number 2. And the only reason it's not number 1 is because number 1 is still Ultimate Railroads. This is a worker placement game with tech tracks that are your railroad routes that you're building. It plays 1 to 4 players in 90 to 120 minutes, has an average Board Game Geek weight of 3.27, which is interesting. I don't feel like the base Russian railroads is quite that heavy, but maybe once you get up to Asian railroads, it is even a little heavier than that. So that's definitely an average across the different expansions that are included in this box. It has an average Board Game Geek rating of 8.4. My rating of it right now is a 9.8. So what you are doing in the base Russian railroads, and sort of the theme that carries through the other 3 expansions, which are German railroads, American railroads, and Asian railroads, is that everybody has their own player board, and you have 3 railroad routes that you are building. You're basically moving these 4 different markers up your railroad routes to represent the building of those routes. And what's really interesting about that is they're 4 different colors, these markers. So they're representing railroad tracks. And you have, first is wood, then copper, then silver, then gold. And they have to be in that order. You have to play, your bronze track has to be ahead of, for instance, your silver track, which has to be ahead of your gold track on the railroad. And when you get to particular spots on that railroad route, you will get different bonuses depending on a few different factors. So which track made it to that space, and then also what locomotive number that you have ahead of that track. So the way that you're moving up this track is this is a worker placement game. So you have, I think we played 3 players. So in the 3-player game, you start with 6 workers. I think in the 4-player game, you start with only 5. And each turn, you are placing from 1 to 3 workers on the board. So if you're placing 3 workers, you're going to get a better action, but it uses up half your workers to do that action. And so there's different spaces. Once somebody goes in that space, somebody else cannot also go in that space. So you're definitely blocking other people by taking a particular action, and that might come into your decision making to try and get someplace first before somebody else does. I can't remember how many rounds this is played over. I think the 3-player game is 6 rounds. It's right around there anyway. And so on your turn, you're taking turns placing workers out on the board to move your tracks up your railroad routes. You also have at either the bottom of your board, in the case of Russian railroads, German railroads, and American railroads, you have an industry track where you can put factories that let you do bonus actions. So there is some chaining together of actions in this game, which is really fun when you get those fun combinations of, ooh, I did this, which allows me to do this, which allows me to do this. But luckily they're quick enough that, because you know how sometimes in games when you have those chaining together of actions, the other people at the table can be like, okay, I'll just sit here while you do your 10 million actions. Each one is quick, right? So there's not a lot of downtime in between your turns. And I felt like the downtime that I had, I spent that whole time planning. Our son was a little bit more, playing off the cuff. I really can't string together words today. So he did wander away from the table a bit on this one, but he loved this game. We all agreed that we loved this. So what we did is in November, we played Russian railroads on our Saturday. And in Ultimate Railroads, it has Russian railroads and then 3 expansions, the German, the American, and the Asian railroads. It also has some modules that you can add on that I'm not really going to talk about. We played Russian railroads the first week, twice, and then the next week we played German railroads, and that upped the complexity just a little bit. But you have different routes, so you have a different player board, but the main board, the worker placement spots remains the same. So you have a different player board, which will have different routes with different bonuses. I think in the German one you have a route that splits, but I'll put a picture of the player board up right about now. So you can see how that differs from the Russian Railroads player board. And then the following weekend, so this will be the 3rd weekend, we played American Railroads, which introduces, again, a different player board and a stock market, which was a lot of fun. And then the 4th weekend, so we played this 4 weekends in a row, we played Asian Railroads. Now that is by far the most complex. And I would like to go back and play that one a few more times, but I think my favorite one probably was German or American railroads. Now, one of the fun things about Asian railroads is that instead of having an industry track at the bottom of your player board, they do away with that, and now you have a shared industry track, which actually was really fun because the factories that you're placing out allow you to do bonus actions as you move your wrench, your little marker, along the track. And so the factories that you lay out don't just benefit you, they benefit other players too, which my partner, when he saw that, was like, I don't want to benefit other people. He's really nice, actually, but he's very competitive. Anyway, that shared industry board was really interesting. So a nice little push and pull between doing things that benefit you, trying not to benefit other people too much. And there was some other dynamics associated with that industry board that were really interesting. So all in all, a really well done game. Ultimate Railroads, I think I mentioned this last month. I actually got this box. The online board game store, Boardlandia, every few months, I guess. I don't know if they have a set schedule. I haven't noticed I haven't noticed a pattern to it, but they do these YouTube streams where they will bring in a lot of their ding games that they are not allowed because of pricing restrictions from the publishers. They're not allowed to put them at discount prices on their storefront, but they can do this where they basically will have these games. They'll put a game up, they'll say, here's the bargain basement price, but it's a ding. Sometimes the damage to the box is something as small as the plastic's torn a little bit, or maybe there's a little corner ding. And then sometimes it's like my copy of Ultimate Railroads, where there was a split in one corner of the box, but none of the components were damaged. So I got it at the bargain basement price of $45. And normally I think it retails for, it's over $100 for this game. But honestly, I think it's worth it. If you like worker placement games, this is definitely a worker placement game. If you don't like worker placement games, it's not the game for you. Train games are not something that draws me in, but I do actually like sort of the historical element of this game, but really the theme is a bit pasted on. It's a worker placement game through and through. But having those 3 additional expansions that really change up the gameplay, I think lends a lot of value to this game. So anyway, I could go on even longer, but that is Ultimate Railroads at number, what was that? Number 1. Of course it was. Number 1 for all of the games that I played in December. If you want to talk to me more about that one, come join us in the Discord and ask me about it. I'll be happy to wax poetic about things I enjoyed about it. But anyway, that was the top 10 games that I played in the month of December. I should mention I have not yet played Ultimate Railroads solo, but I would like to. The Ultimate Railroads box comes with a solo mode, which is something I don't think existed in other iterations or expansions of this game. So that's really interesting, but I have not done that yet. Now this is normally my honorable mentions section, but what I wanted to talk about in this section, and again, there are timestamps in the description if you want to jump around, was BGG, Board Game Geek Secret Santa gifts. So I actually signed up so I've done the main Board Game Geek Secret Santa. This was my 3rd year doing that, and that is a lot of fun. And then my 2nd year doing something called Secret Joker, which is a way more laid back. The main idea is, the minimum requirement is that you purchase for somebody a deck of cards, not the mass market bicycle cards, right? So something local or artistic or something like that, just cards. And then this year, for the first time, I also participated, I went a little overboard this year, I also participated in the 1-player group Secret Santa, which is called the Secret One. And so the idea there, you're buying somebody a game that they can play solo. Let's see, where should I start? The main Board Game Geek Secret Santa was over here. Okay, so actually let's start with Secret Joker, because that's these 2 littlest packages, and super cool. My Secret Joker went above and beyond. They were from Spain, and so they got me these are just traditional, like, Spanish cards. If you're in Spain, there's probably nothing special about these cards, but for somebody who's not in Spain, they're actually pretty cool. So it's not a standard 52 card deck that I'm used to. It's actually, it says 50 cards, but I think that includes the 2 jokers. So I think it's 48 cards. So I'm going to have to look up some games that I can play with this, but it's really fun. Well, I'm not going to take these out of the box. I'll show some pictures up on the screen of what the cards look like. They have different suits that were, see, I'm going off of memory here. Well, coins, that's what's shown on the front. Clubs, which look like sort of giant pickles, which I actually found really weird. If you're from Spain, maybe you can tell me what that is supposed to be. And then cups, I think, was another one. So coins, cups, clubs. Oh, what was the other one? Swords, maybe? Oh, now I gotta look. The jokers are really cool. I'll put a picture up on the screen. You can't see it from there. Yeah, I guess daggers, knives, whatever, swords. So anyway, artwork's kind of cute on these different, definitely a novelty for those of us in the United States. I'm curious what other countries don't do standard 52 card decks. So my understanding is the 52 card deck is a French deck. I'm guessing they use the same deck of cards in England and Canada, but I don't know. What does your country use? How many cards in a standard deck? And I'm really curious. I wish you could post pictures in the comments on the YouTube video, but you can't. So you got to come to the Discord and show us your cards from your country. That would be really cool. What was really cool from my Secret Joker was this deck of cards. And this is a game called Mendelius. And I didn't bring it up. I think I left it downstairs, the card from my Secret Joker. But they basically figured out from my profile that I do genetics, I teach genetics, that I'm a geneticist. And they got me this card that was designed by a genetics researcher to teach principles of genetics. So it's self-published. I'll put some pictures up on the screen. I've not played it yet. This is a 2-player game. The instructions are in Spanish, so I'm going to have to do a little bit of Google Translate. Our son actually has been doing dual language since kindergarten, and he's now in 7th grade. And so I think he was humbled a little when I showed him the instructions, and I was like, what does this say? And there was a bunch of words he had never seen before. He was really pleased to be able to tell me what the cards themselves said, which was grandmother, grandfather, mother, father, son and daughter. And so I can't really tell you how it plays because I've not played it yet. I have to translate the rules, but I'm super excited about this and just so thrilled. I never would have found this game on my own. Again, it's self-published in Spain, and so it's not something that's just available everywhere. And my understanding is my Secret Joker had to actually write to the designer to get a copy of this. So if you're watching, Secret Joker, thank you so much. I am thrilled with these cards. So that was my Secret Joker gift. All right, on to the Board Game Geek Secret Santa gift. So two things I got were, so I have these here. I got Gloomhaven Buttons and Bugs, which I'm super excited about and I've already played, and Undergrove by Elizabeth Hargrave and Mark Wooten. I have not yet played this. In fact, it's still in shrink, but I will be playing it soon. And super excited about this one. So Gloomhaven Buttons and Bugs is basically mini Gloomhaven. Quite literally, your character has been shrunk and you are basically doing all the things you do in Gloomhaven. So we played through Jaws of the Lion over 17 scenarios. And so this is scenario based, just like regular Gloomhaven, but you are playing as one character and working your way through these different scenarios. Anyway, I've made it through the first scenario, but I've done 3 different characters just so I can kind of see which character do I want to play for the whole remainder of the scenario. So anyway, that's Gloomhaven Buttons and Bugs. That's a dungeon crawler. Bit of hand management, I guess. It's a card-driven battle resolution. Cute. Undergrove is a tile-laying game, and the interesting thing about this game is you are playing from the perspective of a tree whose roots are interacting with mycorrhizal fungi that, you know, in this symbiotic relationship, and that's about all I can tell you about how it plays. What do I have written in my notes? Oh, I've gotten ahead of myself on my notes. Hold on. Oh, I should have told you for Mendelius. I actually wrote all this down. I didn't write the mechanisms for Mendelius. I don't think they were listed. They must not have been listed. 2 to 8. It says 2 to 8 players. I think in order to play more than 2 players, you have to have additional copies of the deck. A single deck plays 2 players. 15 to 30 minutes. There's no vote on the weight. There's 1 rating. The rating that's up there is a 6, but they had no comments. So, you know, I take that with a grain of salt. I will wait and let you know what I think after we play it. It was designed by Rafael Navajas. I probably am not pronouncing that right, who's a researcher in genetics at the University of Granada. It was published in 2016. So that was Mendelius. But Undergrove is a tile placement area majority pickup and deliver game. So these are a couple of mechanisms. I'm actually not usually an area majority fan, but do remember watching, it must have been at least a partial, I don't think I watched a whole playthrough of this, partial playthrough of this, and I thought I would like it. It's designed by Elizabeth Hargrave, also with Mark Wooten. I so far have liked all the games by her that I've played, which has been Wingspan, Mariposas, and Tassimasi. Plays 1 to 4 players, so it does have a solo mode in 60 to 75 minutes, an average Board Game Geek weight of 2.64. So this was published in 2024, so I don't know how many people have voted on that. An average rating of 7.2. And like I said, I haven't yet played it. But it does say that you are trading nutrients with fungi to grow new trees, that it was inspired by real mycorrhizal networks. I do remember that it is set in the Pacific Northwest. I think you are a Douglas fir tree. Don't quote me on that. I should have put that in my notes. Oops. It says, in Undergrove, you are a towering evergreen, so it doesn't say what kind in the description, but I think I remember Douglas fir, with an ancient symbiotic connection to the fungi in your forest. As new mushrooms appear, your options expand for converting nutrients and helping your seedlings. So you're using cube conversion, tile placement, area control, tiny bit of engine building to do all this, and you are needing to claim the most advantageous locations for your trees, basically. It looks really fun. I'm thrilled with the theme of the mycorrhizal symbiosis with mycorrhizal fungi. Looking forward to playing this one. All right, that was Undergrove. Let's see, I should put these like that. That leaves the Secret One, and this was amazing. So my Secret Santa for the solo player, cannot string words together today. for the solo community. So this Secret Santa had messaged me, because the requirement is that you get a new game off your wish list, but they had messaged me and said, well, do you mind a not really slightly like an already opened game? So what they told me, they didn't tell me what game it was, but they said they had opened it and punched it, organized it, but that their spouse had no interest in playing it. And did I mind that? And I said, no, of course not, because it's essentially still a new game, right? And so they sent it to me, and oh man, was I thrilled. Inventions, Evolution of Ideas. So what I'm guessing is that my Secret Santa backed this on Kickstarter because it does have the extra goodies in it. And then their spouse said, not so much interested. This is a heavy game. This is definitely not for everybody, but I am thrilled with it. Now, my partner didn't necessarily like it. Maybe he'll give it another chance in a while, but I'm still happy to play this one solo, so which is, you know, the whole purpose of it. Anyway, thrilled with that Secret Santa gift. So Inventions, Evolution of Ideas, and it has such a nice insert that you can put it upright and it will not suffer. Okay, so we'll put that in the camera. I'm gonna get hidden behind it. We'll put our cards in front of it. All right, what do we have next? Okay, so that was all Secret Santa. I also got Under the Tree. So if you got board games for Christmas, either from yourself or from other people, I want to hear about it in the comments. I want to know what everybody got. I'm going to need to scoot over for this. But these were all gifts from my partner, actually. So the one I'm super excited about, I'm most excited about, is Life of the Amazonia, because I had not purchased this one because it never goes on sale. It's always expensive, and so I've never justified it, but I'm really looking forward to playing it. Somebody in our Discord had played it recently and said it was a lot of fun. I also got a mini expansion to go with it, so I'm looking forward to playing this one. It, I think, what does it say? Plays 1 to 4 players in 60 to 150 minutes. I didn't look up all the weight and all that on Board Game Geek, but anyway, that is Life of the Amazonia. Absolutely beautiful. What else? I got Kanagawa, which I don't remember a lot about. I put this on my wish list a long time ago, but I do remember that I first heard about it from the YouTube channel Before You Play? Yes, Before You Play. Monique and Naveen. They really like this game. This is a Bruno Catala game, so designer I really like. Artwork by Charles, is he also a designer? Oh, no, designed by Bruno Catala and Charles Chevalier. It says it's a strategic and poetic card game in which you must paint the most beautiful print. So basically, beautiful artwork. I can't remember the mechanisms, but really looking forward to playing this one as well. That's Kanagawa. I can't reach these. I backed myself into a corner here. Also got Hollyoak, which was on my list because of, totally blanking on their names now. Thinker Themer. Why can I not think of her name? So I'll put that up on the screen. I feel terrible. Why can't I not remember her name? Did you know, here's your trivia for today. Did you know you store proper names and information about the thing or the person in different places in your brain? And sometimes those places in my brain don't like to talk to each other. But this is Hollyoak. It says a seasonal trick-taking game, but I do remember, trick-taking. Okay, so seasonal trick-taking game. Don't know much about that. Nar, I'm looking forward to playing this one. Again, it's been a while since I've put it on my list, so I can't really tell you a lot about it, but the artwork is beautiful. Plays, now I think on the box it says 2 to 4 players, but there's actually a solo mode on BGG that must be good because I see this all the time in the solitaire game on your table list. So that's Nar. And then super excited about this one. There's actually nothing in this box because I've already integrated it with the base game, and that is Cat Lady Box of Treats, which adds a solo mode to Cat Lady. So I'm super excited about that. I have not yet played it. So out of all of these, the only ones I've played so far are Gloomhaven Buttons and Bugs and Inventions, Evolution of Ideas. So I will get to all of these pretty soon. Okay, I am now going to put all of these away. Well, not away, but not in front of me so I can talk about the rest of the games on my list. Okay, I'm back. So something I almost forgot to talk about. This is actually, I almost forgot to talk about because I got these games. I bought these on Black Friday from the PnP Arcade. So these are games that this is gonna be loud. that I printed, and so printed the cards and put them in little sleeves. So I think I paid anywhere from $1 to $3 or something, not including the fact that I have 3D printed a little box for them, but pretty cheap. This is Forage, so I'm looking forward to playing that one. And I also have Orchard, so looking forward to playing that one. This one is Birdscaping, so this plays solo. I think it's 1 to 4, but it definitely plays solo, which is how I plan to play it. And then this one I'm really excited about. This is Arc Minima. So this is a fan-made mini solo version of Arc Nova. I love Arc Nova, so I'm really curious how this plays. Somebody whose taste aligns very closely with mine on the solo game on your table list on Board Game Geek really likes this one, so that's what drew my eye to it. So anyway, I just wanted to mention those because print and play games are an excellent way to get a game relatively inexpensively, maybe because you want to try it out before you get the full production version, or just want a little print and play game for cheap. You can get, I think, all of the Button Shy games on Print and Play Arcade, usually for around $3 each. So a really nice budget-friendly way to get games. And I had some more. These were just channel relevant ones. I actually got a whole bunch of games for $1 each on Black Friday from Print and Play Arcade. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, I wanted to mention that next. Okay, finally, the channel relevant games I played in December. So these are all games with a nature or animal or science theme, something having to do with that. I almost put Inventions, Evolution of Ideas in here just because of this idea, this theme of ideas and inventions, but I decided it wasn't sciencey enough to put in the channel relevant games. Let me know what you think. I think that a lot of people who like science-themed games would like that theme, not necessarily the game. Like I said, it's a heavy game. You got to know that going into it. It's a brain burner. I've played it 3 times. Each one of those plays, we're looking things up in the rule book. It's going to be a few more times before I'm not doing that so much and I can just exist off the player aid. But really looking forward to doing that. All right, for real this time, the channel relevant games that I played in the month of December. At number 9, we have New York Zoo. We played this 2 times in December. We've played it 17 times total. This is a tile laying game with some set collection in it. It plays 1 to 5 players in about 30 to 60 minutes. It has an average weight of 1.95, an average rating on Board Game Geek of 7, and my rating of it is a 7.8. This is a really fun family game. So we usually play this right at 4 players. At its heart, this is an abstract strategy game where you are collecting polyomino tiles, filling in your grid, and along the way you're going to fill up those tiles with breeding animals. This is an Uwe Rosenberg game, so there is some animal breeding going on. The animals in the game are penguins, kangaroos, Arctic fox, meerkats, and I'm forgetting one. Did I say flamingos? Penguins, Arctic fox, meerkat, flamingo, and kangaroo. I'm not sure why that particular collection of animals, so if you know, let me know, but I looked at the Central Park Zoo and the Bronx Zoo, and neither one of them have all those animals. So there you go. Anyway, in this game, you are moving an elephant around a track, around a board, and people are taking turns doing that. So this has an element of multiplayer solitaire, but you are interacting with other players through the use of that central board. So on your turn, you move the elephant from 1 to 3 spaces. Well, actually, the number of spaces you move depends on the player count, but at 4 players, you move it from 1 to 3 spaces. And you will either be taking a tile or you will be taking animals. And in some places along the board, you will pass a marker that says a certain type of animal breeds. And if you have at least 2 of those animals in 1 or 2 enclosures, then you can breed the animals in those enclosures. That is, add an animal to those enclosures. Once you fill up an enclosure with animals, then you empty it out, saving one behind in your animal houses. And that allows you to take a bonus tile. And it's basically just a race to the finish. There are no points in this game, so the first player to finish is the winner. It's just a really fun tile laying game that we really like. My mom likes this one, so it's an automatic winner for me. Anyway, that is number 9, New York Zoo. At number 8, we have Trekking the National Parks, 3rd edition. Now, like I said, I have played the 2nd edition before, and there are actually no rules differences between the 2nd and 3rd edition. There is a scoring change to the way you collect stones, and the other changes from the 2nd to the 3rd edition are that the board in the 3rd edition is a little bit smaller, as are the park cards. And then the major park cards are now major park tiles. But other than that, it's the same game. It does add a solo variant in the box, and that was my main reason for getting it. So anyway, we played this one time in December. We've played it we've played the 3rd edition just once. We've played the 2nd edition 3 times. So I feel like we've played the 2nd edition more than that, but the plays that I record on Board Game Geek are the minimum. And sometimes I forget to record a play. So there you have it. Anyway, this is a hand management and set collection game. If you're not familiar with it, it plays 1 to 5 players in 30 to 60 minutes. It has an average weight on Board Game Geek of 2, an average rating of 7.6, and my rating of it is an 8. Pretty much any national park game that's somewhat good is going to be a winner in my book, I guess. I don't know if winner's the right word, but I'm probably going to enjoy it because of my nostalgia for the national parks. I've visited a lot of them. I've worked in a couple of them. So national park theme games are something I always am on the lookout for. Anyway, what you're doing in this game is everybody has a hiker meeple, and you are moving from park to park, and on your turn you have 3 choices. You can either draw cards, you can move, or you can visit a park. And you can do 2 of those things. You can even do 2 of the same thing, or you can do 2 different things. And so when you draw cards, you're drawing 2 cards, either from the display or blind from the top of the deck. When you move, you're going to use those cards that you have in your hand for their number value. And that number value added up, you can use any number of cards, that number value added up is going to tell you how many spaces you move. And you have to move that exact number of spaces. On the other hand, if you want to visit a park, if you are in a space for that park and it is in the display, and you have cards in your hand that have the symbols that match the park card that you're interested in visiting, then you can pay those cards to visit that park. So these are dual use cards. I really like that. You use them either to move or to visit a park. You can't do both with the same card. And anyway, I love the set collection. I love balancing those multi-use cards. I like the national park theme. The national park cards have information on the back of them that you might be interested in if you're visiting that park, so I found that pretty interesting. We actually used this for a little bit of inspiration for where we want to go next summer. We didn't take a vacation this summer because I was just too busy, but we're hoping next summer we finally decided we're probably going to go to Arches and Canyonlands next summer, so we're planning that right now. We'll see. Anyway, that was number 8, Trekking the National Parks, 3rd edition. At number 7, we have The Search for Lost Species. This one was new to me in December. I played it 3 times, all solo, so I haven't played this multiplayer yet. This is somewhat of a sequel to The Search for Planet X. I played The Search for Planet X a couple of times, but it was a long time ago. They have very similar mechanisms, so I'll talk all about that in a minute. But first, I wanted to tell you that this is a deduction game with action points and a turn order time track, which I really like. It works in such a way that if you are the furthest one back on that time track, it is now your turn. So similar to the way Patchwork works, for instance. I really like that. And it plays 1 to 4 players in 60 to 75 minutes. It has an average weight on BGG of 2.91, an average rating of 7.9, and my rating of it is an 8. And that could go up. I've only played it 3 times. It was all solo. The solo mode is very good. This is an app-driven game. So you will have an app like on your phone and punch in, I can't remember exactly all the information you enter at the very start, but anyway, it kicks you out a game code. And so everybody at the table, if you have multiple people playing, would enter in that same code into the app so everybody's playing the same game. And you are looking for, in this case, a lost species, an animal species that has not been seen in a number of years and is feared to be extinct. What you do on your turn is you have a variety of actions you can take, all that will give you a little bit of information furthering your goal of finding out where the lost species are. So you can either search by boat along the coast or search by walking, and you will basically go a certain number of spaces on the board, or hexagons on the board, and all of the ones that you traveled through and then landed on, you can look for a specific animal there. And the way that it works is it will tell you, like say you went over 4 hexes and you say, I'm looking for frogs. It will tell you in those 4 hexes there is 1 frog. It won't tell you where, right? And so by doing this repeatedly with the different animals, see, the animals are the lorikeets, the lories, the couscous, frogs. There's a snake. I can't remember what kind it is. What else? 4 animals. I feel like there's more than 4 animals. I'll put it up on the screen. Anyway, so that's one thing you can do on your turn is move through these hexes to see if there's animals there. You can also visit a village. When you visit a village, you get to take a card and you also get to do a research action. And so there is, I think it was 5 or 6 different particular research questions that you can ask, and you will get a little bit more information in terms of logic rules, sometimes about one animal in relation to another, or an animal in relation to a habitat, or just some logic rule about an animal. And so you keep track of all this on a sheet, and at some point you might figure out where the lost species are. At that point, I forgot one action. You can set a camera trap. And so these are very expensive actions. You can only do it one time for each circuit around the board. I think you don't get your camera back for a while. So you might be able to do it once or twice in a game, but what it allows you to do is put your camera in a hex and learn exactly what animal is in that hex. If it's the lost species, it will appear empty. And there are empty hexes on the board, on the map. And so just because you hear that it's empty, could be empty, might be the lost species, you don't know. Anyway, and then at some point you feel like you have enough information. You could say, I think I know where the lost species are. If you're playing multiplayer, you don't tell everybody. You type it into the app where you think it is, and then this game asks you to also tell it what is in each of 2 hexes adjacent to where you think the lost species are. So you have to have more information than just where you think the lost species is. And you type that in and it'll tell you whether you were right or not. If you were right, you still don't tell everybody. Everybody has a chance then to make their guesses for where the lost species are, or maybe they can make a guess about an animal that's in a hex on the board, because that scores you points. The solo mode is really well done. Let's see, I played this at the very beginning of December. You are trying to beat the score of the AI, and the AI, I can't remember the AI's name, put it up on the screen. The AI moves around, so it also is setting camera traps and moving around the board and visiting villages, but it doesn't get in your way because multiple players can be in the same place. So that's no problem. It's just accumulating points. Very low maintenance. The app tells you exactly what to do with the AI meeple. And what I really liked is when you go to the AI's turn, the app will first have you confirm where on the board that AI is. It'll tell you the AI is here and it is in this hex. And that's really nice for those of us that sometimes forget to do a step or something, like forget to move the AI's meeple, or maybe forget to move it on the board or something. So the app will tell you where it is supposed to be. It keeps track of all of that. Every once in a while, the AI will put in a species guess. And at some point, the AI will guess the location of the lost species. And they're always right in their animal guesses and their lost species guesses. So it's a little bit of a race, and it's a little bit of beating their points because you want to guess where the lost, or determine where the lost species is before the AI gets it. Anyway, really fun game. I very much enjoyed it. Like I said, I've only played it solo so far. I did play the Search for Planet X with my partner and our son, and our son really liked it. I really liked it, although I like this theme better. My partner didn't like the Search for Planet X. He said it felt too much like homework. So take that how you want. If you're not into deduction games, if you feel like trying to puzzle out all the relationships and the logic rules and everything would be just too much work, then this probably isn't the game for you. But I think it's a really fun game. I like solving that little mystery. And I will say that the species that they used in this game are actually real-world lost species, or at least they were when the game was published. There's 6 of them in the game, and so I'm thinking at some point they could do expansions with additional species. But species were chosen from an organization called Rewild, a list that they keep of lost species. And like I said, there's 6 species. They're all animals, and so they could in future games do plants and fungi as well, because the organization Rewild keeps track of those as well. I will say that in November of 2023, one of the lost species was found. I can't remember all the details, but it was the Attenborough's long-beaked echidna was actually sighted, located. So no longer lost, but it is in the game. So there you go. Anyway, that is the search for lost species at number 7. And number 6, we have Aquamarine. So I think I've talked about this one before. Anyway, I played it once in December. I've played it 14 times total. This is a print and play game published by Postmark Games that I backed on Kickstarter a while back. It is a roll and write game with dice rolling, roll and write, and movement points that you use to explore the depths of the ocean, presumably, well, wait, I'm getting off track. First, I have to tell you how many people it plays and that sort of thing. It plays it says 1 to 100 players, but really it can play any number of players. I'll probably do a play along on the channel at some point. And it plays in about 20 to 30 minutes. It has an average weight on Board Game Geek of 1.79, an average rating of 7.4, and my rating of it is an 8. And this is a really relaxing, for me anyway, a really relaxing little solo puzzle. I've never played it multiplayer. This is one of those solo-only games for me. It really would be multiplayer solitaire. If you're playing it multiplayer, there's no difference between the solo and the multiplayer game, except that in the solo game, in order to win, not only are you trying to beat your own score, but you have to make it past certain depth markers for each of your 3 dives. So you have to go on 3 dives, and you have to make it past certain markers in order to not lose the game. Similar to in Waypoints, where you had to end up at a campfire at least 3 out of the 4 nights. So that's if you're playing solo, there's that. And so what you're doing in this game is you are rolling 2 dice each turn, and you will choose one of those dice for your movement. And for instance, if I roll, say, a 3 and a 5, I could use the 3 to move, and what I would do is box in 3 boxes on the grid in either, rectangle going up and down or horizontal. And it has to be adjacent to your previous move, right? Thematically, that makes sense because you're diving down, right? You can't teleport somewhere and you're constantly going down. You can go sideways. I don't remember if you can go back up or not. You wouldn't really want to anyway. But if I had chosen the 5, which is the higher of the 2 numbers in my example, then I would have to use one oxygen to use that higher number. And again, I would box in 5 squares, either horizontal or vertical. And if I roll doubles, that's pretty fun. So if I roll doubles, like if I roll double 5s, now I don't have to keep my shape in either a square or a rectangle. I can make any shape I want, as long as I'm enclosing squares. And what's more, I take the number that makes up the doubles, so in this case a 5, I rolled 2 5s, and I add 2 to that, and that's the number of squares that I would box in, right, in any shape. So it's always fun to roll doubles. And you have a finite number of turns. I think it's 24 turns because it's played over what would be presumably 24 hours of a day. So I'm guessing you're actually part of a dive team, not a single diver, because man, that would be exhausting. But anyway, there are goals that you're trying to get as you make your way down to the depths. You're trying to visit flags or visit beacons, see particular animals, and whether it's day or night makes a difference in what animals you're looking for. You're trying to avoid the jellyfish because they'll give you negative points. So like I said, I'll probably do a play along for this one at some point. And that was number 6, Aquamarine. And number 5 is a game that I feel doesn't get enough love. It kind of flew under the radar. Pun completely intended. This is Enchanted Plumes. It ends up in this list thoroughly by art alone. The theme is very thin. I believe I've talked about this one before. I played it one time in December, and I actually played it multiplayer in December. My partner and I played it. I usually play it solo, but he likes to play it too. I've played it 19 times, at least 19 times total. This is a hand management, open drafting, and set collection game. Plays 2 to 6 players in 20 to 40 minutes. Now notice I said 2 to 6 players, and then I said I usually play it solo. In the box, the rules are for 2 to 6 players, but the designer, this is not a fan-made solo mode, this is the designer, after the game was published, posted a solo mode, a very good solo mode on Board Game Geek, and so I'll provide a link to that down in the description below. It has a Board Game Geek weight of 1.36, an average rating of 7.4, and my rating of it is an 8. Like I said, I really like this game. It's very puzzly. So what you're doing, whether you're playing multiplayer or solo, there's a central market of cards. And on your turn, you first have to play 1 or 2 cards into your player area. I'll explain that in a minute. Or you draw 1 or 2 cards off the deck, or exchange 1 or 2 cards from the market that's face up. So you can either exchange 2 cards, draw 2 cards, or draw 1 and exchange 1. So you have to do that last part. You have to play at least 1 card before you do that. And in the solo game, you are taking cards from the market, and the number of cards in the market decreases as you go. And then when it gets down to a certain number, it fills back up. And the end game is triggered the same way, both solo and multiplayer, and that is when the peahen shows up. So when you were setting up the game, you would have shuffled the peahen into, I think it's the bottom 8 cards. So you know about where she's going to show up, but you don't know exactly where she's going to show up. And when she shows up, game over. Now it's time to count your points. So what have you been doing with your cards this whole time? You have been putting them into basically inverted triangles in front of you. Your top row of cards can be, you can play any number, any color, any number of cards in your top row of cards. That will be, all of those, according to their face value, will be negative points at the end of the game. The next row, you can only play cards that have a color that existed in the row previous to it, and that'll be true all the way down. What's more, I said this was an inverted triangle, you're going to play 1 fewer card in each row as you go down. And after the top row, which was all negative points, all the rows after that, man, I cannot talk, all the rows after that are positive points. And if you manage to get all the way down to 1 card, the final row, just 1 card, then every card in your plume, that's what we call the inverted triangle, every card in your plume will be worth a bonus point. So that's always fun to do. But you have to be very careful here, because it feels like when you're laying out your cards at first that 5 cards in that top row doesn't seem like very many. But man, when you think about how many cards that is, it's 5 and then 4, so we're up to 9, plus 3 is 12. Plus 2 is 14, plus 1 is 15. That's 15 cards. And I can't remember how big the deck is. Let's see, I have this here somewhere. You can see it's not very big. So there's 100 feather cards, 10 cards numbered 0 to 9 in each of 10 feather colors. So there's red, white, yellow, green, orange, teal, blue, pink, purple, black. However, you remove certain numbers depending on the player count. So at 2 players, you remove, and it's solo if I remember correctly, I'll take a look here in a minute, but you remove the 7, 8, and 9. So you're only playing with cards 1 through 6. Let's see, I have my little solo rules laminated in here. Utilize the deck setup for 2 players, so all values 0 through 6. So you still have 10 colors, but you only have 0 through 6 for your numbers. And then everything else is, like I said, so I can't remember in the solo. The end of your turn, discard the rightmost card from the train. The train is the central market of cards. And then take your turn with a train of 4 cards, and then so on and so on. And it says here, a score of 96 or more is considered a win. And then on the back, it gives you, these are pretty funny, actually. I'll read a couple of them. It gives you score ranges and gives you a feedback on that range. So a score of 65 or less, it says the peahen ignores you. So the peahen is looking at your tail and seeing if you're any good, which is what peahens do. The males show off their big tails for the females, and the females, it turns out, based on research that was done, I think in the 70s, I can't remember who did it, but the more eye spots a male has, that's one of the things that will convince a female that he's worthy. That was a pretty interesting experiment. I think I talk about it. I wrote a blog, a small blog about this. Let's see, 66 to 65 points, the peahen is less than enthused. And then 91 to 95, the peahen is super into you, but not quite ready to commit. And then if you get 100 or plus, 100 or more, it's love at first sight. This is the peahen you've been waiting for all your life. Anyway, that is Enchanted Plumes. And that was, what was that? Number 5. At number 4, we have Waypoints. I feel like I talk about this game every month, so I'll try not to go on and on about it. I do have a couple of play-along videos up for this one, so check those out. Probably have a review in the first one. I can't remember. It's been a while since I looked at it. I played this one time in December. Surprisingly, I usually don't just play it one time when I sit down to play it, but I must have had just a few spare minutes. I've played it 31 times or more total. This is a roll and write route building simultaneous, well, if you play with multiple players, it's simultaneous action selection. Fancy way of saying multiplayer solitaire, right? And so on, or not on your turn, it's each round a die is rolled and you are marking spaces around the outside edge of a map, a central map. And each of those spaces has a number in it. So if I roll a 3, I'll go forward 3 spaces on the track, and whatever number is in that box, those are the number of movement points that I have to move on the map. And so every time you cross a contour line, every time you cross a grid line, that counts as a movement. So if I had 3 movement points, I could cross 3 of those lines in any combination. If you play the more recent map, there's 4 maps so far, and they said they're going to do 5, so there should be one more coming. The most recent map was a ski resort, cross-country ski resort theme, and there, if you're going uphill, it's more movement points. Okay, I just realized I jumped ahead. This plays any number of players. It's an unlimited number of players. It plays in about 20 to 40 minutes. It has an average weight on Board Game Geek of 2.28, an average rating of 7.7, and my rating of it is an 8.2. This is such a fun game. I don't know how they do it, but it really captures the feeling of hiking through the wilderness, the way that you have to be careful of, how much movement you have to monitor how much water you have. You can collect gear and view animals along the way, and that gear will help you in various ways. It's all thematic. And in the solo game, at least, in order to win, it's beat your own score, really, but in order to not lose, you have to end up at a campfire at least 3 out of the 4 nights. If you're playing hard mode, you have to end up at a campfire all 4 nights. I always play 3 out of 4, just to give myself a little wiggle room. So the other maps, so I said the most recent one was set at a cross-country ski resort. The first one, you're hiking through forest and mountains, and then I can't remember what order the second and third map came out. Well, I know what order second and third came in, but which ones came when. There's one that goes through a desert, so there's a desert canyon in the middle, and you're hiking through the desert. And the other one is a coastal map where you're scuba diving and traveling on ferries and that sort of thing. Anyway, this is the second game by Roy Muldoon and Matthew Dunstan, published by Postmark Games in this list. I actually am going to talk about, when I talk about the crowdfunding games, I backed a game by them last month. It was actually the only thing I backed last month. Yay! Anyway, that was number 4, Waypoints. And number 3 is a game I talked about last month. It was new to me last month, and this is HYVE. I do have 2 videos out for this. I'll talk about why here in just a minute, but I should tell you I played it 1 time in December. I've played it 10 times total. I'm surprised I didn't get to it more times in December, but I was just so busy. And then the holidays were upon me, and so hopefully I'll get to it again in January. This is a roll and write worker placement game. It's a print and play. It's available on Dice Pen. We'll talk about that in a minute. It plays 1 or 2 players, and that depends on which packet you get. There's 3 different packets to choose from, so again, I'll talk about that in a minute. Plays in about 45 minutes. This is a much longer than usual, I guess, print and play game. There are a few other roll and write games that are this long, but not too many. Your first couple of plays of it will probably be a little bit longer as you're figuring out, all these different things. I suggest just starting with map. I keep wanting to call it a map. Starting with the player sheet 0, level 0. and play with that one first, and just don't obsess too much over all of you. Just explore the different movements and what they do and see what the outcome is. Or play along with me when I do my playthrough. You could do that and see what I do and see what you might have done differently. Anyway, that's my suggestion. I love this game. That was the reason I made the 2 videos, actually. So I backed this on Kickstarter a while back, and it actually, I don't feel like it took me too long to get to the table, but I'd have to go back and look. In this game, you are rolling a bunch of dice, the number of which will depend on your population. And then you're using those dice, they're your worker bees, and you are performing a variety of actions. And any that don't get allocated to the main actions in the game will be used to fill up those central hives with nectar. Now, when I was learning this game, I really struggled with the rulebook. That is pretty much my only negative critique of this game. And that is that the rulebook is great once you know how to play the game. And to learn the variants from the rulebook, I think, is not going to be hard. But the first time through, learning the game from the rules was very challenging. I got a few things wrong. So my suggestion is to watch my how to play or the playthrough, or both. A word of caution, some of the older videos for this game, they changed one of the rules after the game came out from Kickstarter. So the Kickstarter previews were correct when they were filmed, but they changed one of the rules, and I'm glad they did, because it is the rule in one of the rules for bringing larvae into the hives, and I just don't see in the old rule how you would never not run out of all your population. So there are 3 ways to win in this game. You start your score marker in the top left corner of the score track, and the score track goes across the top and down the left side. And so you're basically starting in the middle, and there's no numbers along the score track. You're just moving spaces, right? And you can win by getting all the way to the top right side. That's a thriving colony. And you lose if you make it all the way to the bottom left corner, because that's colony collapse. You can also win if you make it through all 4 seasons. So this game is played over 4 seasons. In most of the difficulty level sheets, I'll explain that in a minute, there are 4 turns per season, and so 16 turns in the game. You can also win if you fill in all 6 central hives with nectar. So you might not have to play through all of those seasons if you can fill in all of those hives with nectar before that happens. And so those are your 3 ways to win the game. The other way you can lose the game, besides making it to colony collapse, is if your population ever drops to 0. Of course, you would lose the game because you have no bees left. The number of dice you roll each turn is dependent on your population. So you roll a number of dice equal to your population. And in most of the difficulty levels, you're capped at 10 dice. But I think it's the first 3 levels, 0, 1, and 2. I think those are the ones that don't cap you. You can roll as many dice as you have population, which is kind of fun, but a little bit dangerous. The scoring is a little tricky. I think as you get up in the difficulty levels, I haven't gotten there yet, but I think as you get up in the difficulty levels, the scoring looks more traditional. But the first few levels use what's called wobbly scoring. I'm not going to get into it here because it's a little bit complicated. It's not really. Once you get it, it's one of those things where steep learning curve, once you get it, it's totally fine and you are mystified why it was so difficult. So at least that's how I felt. I don't know how anybody else feels about it. So the only other thing I want to say about this, and besides the worker placement and the puzzle of placing your worker bees, optimally to try and win the game, the other thing that I love about this game is it's very thematic. So the main worker placement spots, the first one lets you reroll dice, and that is, I think it's called something like reallocating your workers or something. The second worker placement spot is the bakery, and that's where the bees are making bee bread. I didn't even know about bee bread before I played this game, so I learned something new. But this is something that bees make out of nectar and pollen, and they bind it all together with their saliva. I don't think anything else goes into it. And this gets them through the winter, and I don't know why I had never thought. I guess I just always thought that bees hibernate through the winter, but through the winter they actually have to vibrate, right? They huddle and they vibrate to keep warm. So they do need to have a source of energy in the winter, and bee bread is what provides that. So that was something new that I learned. And then the next pair of worker placement spots. You can choose one or the other, and that is either tend eggs or tend larvae. So you can either grow up eggs into larvae, or you can take larvae and place them into those central hives. The next worker placement spot has to do all with royal jelly and provides you different ways to get points and to put nectar, sort of bonus ways to put nectar into those central hives. And it has a really interesting scoring mechanism that happens every time you fill up the hives, where you have to balance the colors that you're using. I forgot to mention one of the most important parts. So you're using 6-sided dice. And for numbers 1 through 5, you're assigning each of those numbers a color, and then 6 is wild. So when you are filling in nectar in those central hives, the color that you fill in has to do with what number of die you're using to fill those in. So it's quite a balancing act. It's a really fun puzzle. I love it. And I can't wait to play it again. I said I would tell you about the 3 different packets that are available on Dice Pen. So there's one of them that is just the different difficulty levels. So that's 0 to 8. There's 9 different levels. Those are all solo. There's also a packet that are 2-player. I haven't played any of those yet, so I can't really talk about them, but there is a head-to-head. I think there's a cooperative mode, and there's a couple of variants of each of those. And then there's another packet that is variants, like a couple in particular that I really want to play on the channel, and that is one that looks at what happens when the hive gets infected with varroa mites, and there's another one called Cold Snap that extends the winter so that you have harsh conditions for a longer period of time. And there's also, I think, a couple of jumbo versions and a turbo version, which I should probably try because I think that plays faster. I mean, the name makes it sound like it. Anyway, you could purchase each of those separately. I don't remember the cost on Dice Pen. Again, I backed this on Kickstarter, so I think I paid $10 for all. I got everything that comes in those 3 different packets. Anyway, that was number 3, HYVE. Coming in at number 2 is a game I was shocked to see that it took me almost 2 years to get this back to the table after playing it before, because I love this game and I don't know where the time goes. I played it one time in December and a couple more times in January, so I'll talk about this again next month. Played it 14 times total. This is a worker placement and set collection game with action points. It plays 2 to 4 players. It can play solo. I'll talk about that in a moment. In 60 to 150 minutes, so an hour to 2+ hours. Has an average Board Game Geek weight of 4.6. This is a pretty heavy game. An average rating of 7.8, and my rating of it is a 9. It could actually go up. I probably should put this closer to a 9.5. I don't know why it's a 9. It should probably be a 9.5. That one of the benefits of doing these vlogs every month is it forces me to reconsider my ratings. I think this should go up to a 9.5, so let's say 9.5. In this game, you are basically cleaning up a science mess. The premise is that there is this Professor Latif who created this weather machine to tinker with the weather to make it better locally. However, his tinkering had negative effects further away, right? So maybe in some places it was snowing more, or too hot, or too foggy, or too rainy. I think those are all. I'm missing one. Cold, no, we got that. So rain, I gotta think about it now. Rain, fog, wind, snow, and sun or heat. So those are the different weather types that are being affected. And your job is to work with Professor Latif with the assistance of the government to come up with, basically to fix his machine to make the weather not bad in other places, right? To undo the damage that was done, I guess the best way to think about it. And so in order to do that, on your turn, you're going to be choosing to place your worker, your scientist, at one of 3 main worker placement spots, or into the supply area, another worker placement spot to pick up supplies and stuff. And those 3 main worker placement spots are the government, Latif's lab, and research and development. At each of those locations, you have a choice of 2 different actions depending on which of the 3 worker placement spots you go to. Okay, wait, I gotta back up. That probably sounded confusing. At each of those 3 locations, there are 3 worker placement spots. One of them allows you to take both actions that are available at that location. The other 2 spots let you take one of the 2 actions. Now, if you're playing a 2-player game, the rightmost spot is blocked off, so there's only 2 worker placement spots. And when you go to the government, you're basically trying to get government funding, government assistance, and in return, you're providing them information that helps them build their machine, because of course they're also trying to fix the weather. So that's the government spot. In the middle spot, in Latif's lab, you are building prototypes, and every once in a while your prototype will run to see if it works to fix the weather. Usually it doesn't. It causes the weather to get worse. That's one of the 2 actions, right, to help with building the prototype. And the second action you can take there is to publish a paper. So there's an underlying theme of publishing your paper, getting your paper cited, and gaining an award and working towards a Nobel Prize. All right, so you can do either helping with the prototype or to publish a paper at Latif's lab. Over in the R&D section, you're basically perfecting your prototype. You also might have a breakthrough. If you have a breakthrough, that means that you have built a good prototype that has benefited the weather further out. So the way that is represented in the game is that for each weather type, there are 3 tiles. And I'll probably be putting pictures up right about now that show you that each of those sets of 3 tiles, the weather is getting worse and worse. You have level 1, level 2, and level 3. And so when you have a breakthrough at the R&D spot, you get to remove one of those tiles from the board. Now, it might come back later if you mess things up over at Latif's lab, but for now, you get to take it off the board. In order to do that, I should say, I back up a little bit. In order to have that breakthrough, you had to have published a paper. So there's an order of events you have to work towards. First you have to research it, then you have to publish, and then you can have the breakthrough. And every time you publish, you get an award, which is great. And if you get 3 of those awards, you get the Nobel Prize. And I believe that's a game end trigger. I've never done it, so I can't remember. The timer for the game, whether it's multiplayer or solo, there's an additional timer, but the timer for the game are the weather tiles that are in Latif's lab. Every time the experiment runs, one of those tiles gets removed, and there's a finite number of those tiles. Once the last one is placed into the display, that triggers the end of the game. Everybody takes one more turn, you play one more round, and go to final scoring. And so this is a real brain-burning efficiency puzzle. And because you have to take particular actions in a particular order, it requires a lot of advanced planning. To take those actions, something I didn't mention, will require, there are in the game, the economy of the game is twofold. One is you have chemicals and gears. Those are going to help you with making the prototypes. And you also have vouchers. So you have vouchers for the government, vouchers for Latif's lab, vouchers for R&D, and then you have general science vouchers. In order to take actions at each of those different spots, you have to spend these vouchers. Furthermore, if you want to gain some extra points in Latif's lab when the experiment runs, you're going to need some science vouchers. And the same is true for research and development. When you have a breakthrough over there, that's going to probably require science vouchers. So those are quite valuable. There are a finite number of each voucher that you can have in your supply. And so there's a nice balance of making sure you have some, but you don't want to be in a situation where you're supposed to gain, say, 2 science vouchers, but you're already maxed, and that just feels really unsatisfying, right? So you try and look ahead and see when that's going to happen. So it's just a really fun puzzle. I love playing it multiplayer, and I also love playing it solo. I've played it solo and at 2 players. I haven't played it at 3 or 4 players. When you play 2 players, you have Latif I think all the multiplayer games, this little character, Latif, Professor Latif, is moving around the board, basically getting in your way. In the 2-player game, he additionally will remove research tokens off the board. These are the research tokens you're collecting in order to publish your papers. You also will need chemicals and gears to do the different actions. In order to store those, you have to manage your own laboratory space. And so there are tiles that you can bring in to grow your own lab. And there's some rules surrounding that you also have to balance out. So there's a lot to think about in this game, but thematically, I think anyway, it makes a lot of sense. This game, to me, was very intuitive. This was the first Vital Lacerda game that I played. He has quite a reputation, if you're not aware. He has quite a reputation for very thematic, very heavy games. And so what I found interesting, because this was my first Lacerda game, I thought it was very thematic. I'm coming at it from the perspective of a scientist and, with publishing papers and doing research. And, sometimes things don't go right. Sometimes they do. I thought it was very thematic. What's interesting to me is a good proportion of folks who were already fans of Vital Lacerda's games and had played his games thought that this theme was too fantastical, this idea of tinkering with the weather. More about that in a minute. But he has Kanban EV that's about assembling cars, which doesn't sound like a lot of fun, but from what I could tell, it really is, actually. There's another one called CO2, which I actually don't know anything about. I feel like I should. There's another one called Lisboa. That one I really want to play, but that's about an earthquake that destroyed the city of Lisboa in Portugal, and I guess you're building it back up. I don't actually really know too much about the theme of that one, but the point I'm trying to make is when you go into the forums for Weather Machine, the game forums on Board Game Geek, there's a lot of people who were previously fans of Lacerda's games in the forums who are like, they hate Weather Machine because they don't feel it's thematic. They don't feel like the mechanisms make sense in terms of the theme. And then there's a whole other contingent, most of them from what I can tell are scientists, or at least understand the world of science, or have, understands maybe not the right word, that sounds really pompous, are familiar with the world of science, I guess is a better way to put it. And for a lot of them, this might have been their first Lacerda game. And they're, coming at it with the viewpoint of this is a very thematic game and the mechanisms and the theme are very intimately tied. So I am glad this was my first Lacerda game because if I compare Weather Machine and Inventions Evolution of Ideas, even though the game flow does make sense to me thematically in Inventions Evolution of Ideas, I feel like I have to look a lot more things up than I did when I first learned Weather Machine. Now, maybe I have rose-colored glasses because it took me a couple years to get this back to the table. So I don't know, but I feel like it's a very thematic game. I love it. I love the theme. And I was really saddened. So I brought this back to the table with the intention of filming a solo playthrough for you guys. And had it all set up. I played through a couple of games. I'll talk about the solo mode here in a moment. But then on the third game, about halfway through the third game, I thought, well, I better make sure that everything is laid out on the table so that it'll be in the camera view and make sure that all works. And was extremely disappointed to find that with my webcam that I'm using for my overhead camera, it's not going to work. I can't film Weather Machine until I get a decent camera that I can put up a little higher that will get the full view without any distortion and can be well focused. And preferably one that, I don't know how this works, but I know people do it on their channels. So maybe if you have a YouTube channel and you know how to do this, with an overhead camera and being able to zoom in, like with the push of a button or something, into different parts of the board. So I'm not really sure how that works. But anyway, so I was already saving up for a good camera. So I have money that I have earned from Patreon that I have set aside. It is all going towards a good camera one of these days. So I do need a better camera to be able to do that. When I do, I will film Weather Machine. So that was really disappointing to find that out. What I will be doing is writing a blog post. So I'll talk more about that at the end. What I want to talk about now is the solo mode. So the solo mode is a little more complicated. This is a solo mode by David Turksey. It's a little bit more on the complicated side. However, it flows pretty well. So what it is you have these saboteurs, and the theme here is that they're basically trying to mess you up and get in your way and steal things from you and publish before you, scoop you on research. And they have a deck of cards that you turn over to determine their actions, and it's all laid out in a player aid, and it flows pretty well. It was a little difficult for me my first time back after 2 years being away. I had to look up a lot of stuff, but the player aid and the rules for the solo mode, very well done, very well written, very well laid out. I want to give a shout out to Paul Grogan because I believe he is the one that, I don't know if he wrote the rule book, but I'm pretty sure I recall that he worked on it. He is very good with understanding a well laid out rule book. And so I feel like he had a big hand in that one. It's very well done. So that is Weather Machine. What else do I want to say about that? Oh, the blog. So I actually haven't written a blog post since April. It's been almost a year. Oh my goodness. It takes me so long to research and write those blog posts because I want to do a good job. I want the science to be right. And usually it involves me learning some things that I didn't know, or at least learning more details that I didn't know about. And I really want to write one for Weather Machine because this theme of weather manipulation actually has conspiracy theories that are, let's see, I can't talk today. There are conspiracy theories that think that the government can manipulate the weather more than we can. We can do cloud seeding, and there is research ongoing about how we might manipulate cloud cover or something. I don't understand all the details just yet, to be able to reflect some of the sun radiation back into the atmosphere to help cool the earth. But we're not doing that yet. Like, that's all in the thinking and research phase, right? We certainly can't create hurricanes or tornadoes or anything like that. So we're not building weather machines for real, but it's certainly not all that far-fetched. And one of the really interesting things to think about when you're playing this game is in Weather Machine, Professor Latif's purpose was to make the weather better for like sun for sporting events or more snow for skiing, or I don't know what purpose rain would serve, but anyway, I like the rain personally, but I grew up in Seattle. It does have its roots in reality in that we humans, very often, when we try to fix things in the environment, we end up messing them up. And we are changing the climate, just not on purpose, right? So we can do it. It's not that far-fetched, but just something interesting to think about. So I'm looking forward to writing that blog post. It will probably be at least a month before I can focus my attention over there. So that was number 2, Weather Machine. Coming in at number 1 is Wingspan. We played this one time in December. We have 18 recorded plays on Board Game Geek, but we have certainly played it more than that because we have owned this game longer than I have been keeping track of plays. This is an engine building game with hand management, open drafting, and set collection. It plays 1 to 5 players in 40 to 70 minutes, has an average Board Game Geek weight of 2.47, an average rating of 8, and my rating of it is a 9.3. So this is, as you might have guessed from the title, a game about birds. The premise of the game is that you are managing a wildlife preserve, and you are attracting birds into 3 different habitats that are represented by 3 different rows on your player board. So each player has their own player board, and for each habitat, there's a forest habitat, a grassland habitat, and a wetland habitat. Each of those habitats have 5 spots that you can play birds into, and you'll play birds into them from left to right. And you may or may not fill up your whole board by the end of the game. Each of the birds that you play into your habitat are worth different numbers of points. They can also collect eggs on them, and the number is determined by the bird that it is, and they'll show you that on the card. And each bird that you play might be associated with particular powers. Most of them are. Some of them are not. Those ones are usually worth a lot of points. The powers that they can have, in the base game at least, can be either white or brown or pink. White powers trigger when you play the card. This is usually something like drawing additional bonus cards. Pink powers trigger when somebody else does something between your turns. So usually something you can do once between turns if somebody else does an action. And the brown powers will trigger when you take particular actions associated with each habitat. So let's talk about those. There are 4 different actions you can take in the game. You can either play a bird, which will cost you some food to feed the bird to lure it in, and possibly some eggs. And then there's 3 other actions, each one associated with a different habitat. So with the forest habitat, there is collect food, where you will collect food based on the dice that are available in the lovely bird feeder dice tower. It's awesome, completely unnecessary, but very thematic and fun. And so that's with the forest habitat. Associated with the prairie habitat is the lay eggs action, where you can put eggs on bird cards that you've played into your preserve. And associated with the wetland habitat is the draw cards action, where you can collect more birds into your hand. So at the start of the game, each player starts with 5 cards and 5 different food in the game. So they'll start with 1 of each. And from those 10 things, you have to choose 5 to keep. So maybe 3 birds and 2 food, or 4 birds and 1 food, or 4 food and 1 bird. You get the idea. And then on your turn, you'll do one of those actions. This is based on a cube economy that diminishes as the game goes through. So this is played over 4 rounds. At the end of each round, there is a scoring bonus. And you will take one of those cubes that you're using for your turns and put it on the end of round bonus to mark how many points you have for that end of round bonus. So every round you're going to have 1 fewer cube to play. So on your turn, you will use one of the cubes that you haven't used so far, and you will place it on your board to indicate what action you're taking. If you are taking one of the actions associated with a habitat, so either the gather food action in the forest, the lay eggs action in the prairie, or the draw cards action in the wetlands, you will put the cube that you're using just past the last bird that you've played in that habitat. And the reason you do this is after you take that main action, gather food, lay eggs, or draw cards, then you're going to move that cube to the left and stopping at each bird with a brown power. So remember, I mentioned the brown powers and said I'd talk about them later. So these trigger every time you take that main action. And so you will work from right to left through those brown powers and take the action associated with them. So usually they're things like get some extra food from the bird feeder, or draw a card, or maybe tuck some cards from your hand that will be worth points later. Or with the birds of prey, this is a really fun one. With the birds of prey, you'll draw a card off the top of the deck, and if the wingspan for that bird is less than a certain amount in centimeters, then you will be able to tuck that card under the bird of prey, representing, its dinner, right? So you'll do this over the 4 rounds, and at the end of the game, you're going to get points for the birds that you have played into your reserve, into your board, basically, the 3 habitats. You will get 1 point for each egg that is left over on those birds. And some of the birds in the expansion, so there's an Oceania expansion, a Europe expansion, and an Asia expansion, they introduce some end of game bonuses and scoring, so that could happen too. And the person with the most points is the winner. So my mom really likes this game, and this is the heaviest game that we have that she can play, or that I shouldn't say that she can play, that she enjoys playing. And I think the reason has to do entirely with those cubes and the way that the bonus actions work with the birds. And of course, the beautiful artwork, right? That doesn't hurt. But the fact that you are keeping track of everything you do on your turn, you're keeping track of it with that cube, means that you don't get lost in your chaining together of different actions like you can in some games. And I think that makes it not necessarily beginner friendly. This is not a first game I would introduce to somebody unless they are like a birder, or they have some intimate connection with that theme, then maybe. But this certainly could be a second or third game that you introduce somebody to. And I think a lot of it has to do with how easy it is to keep track of what you're doing in the game. You can plan ahead. You can see how many more turns you're going to have each round. You can see at the start of the game what each end of round bonus is going to be. You start the game with bonus card that you are going to be working towards. Maybe don't get too caught up in that. It's just everything is so well put together, and on top of that, the beautiful artwork, and then on each card they have a little bit of information about each bird, so that's really fun. And the component quality, of course, is fabulous because it's Stonemaier Games, so the little eggs are adorable and look just like candy, which I've heard can be a problem, but we haven't had a problem with it. The wooden dice are lovely. The bird feeder dice tower, that's awesome. The boards are, really well done. Card quality is great. I just really love this game. I don't play it solo physically so often. I do have the app version that I will occasionally play, but the solo mode is lovely on this. It's not difficult to do. So lovely solo mode, great multiplayer, plays well at all player counts. We have the Asia expansion. We have not played the duet mode, so I can't talk about that just yet, but there is a 2-player version, and I think it also increases the player count. We never play above 4, so I also can't speak to that. Anyway, really lovely game, and that is Wingspan at number 1. Oh, one other thing I wanted to say about Wingspan, well, a couple things actually. One, I want to say that while this wasn't the first nature-themed game, by far, there are nature-themed games going way back, right? And there was even some others that made it pretty big that came out not long before Wingspan. Things like Evolution and Takanoko and Trekking the National Parks is another one, actually, that was first published in 2014, and Photosynthesis and some other ones. So these are all games you might have heard of that were published before Wingspan came out, but Wingspan was the first nature-themed game that made a huge splash. I don't know how many copies this has sold, but it's a lot. It's sold in Target, has a beautiful box, but what I can credit it with is bringing a lot of people into the hobby. So prior to Wingspan, the vast majority of games, and this is still a little bit true, but not as much, the vast majority of games had themes that were like, space or trading in the Mediterranean, for instance, right? Or, some sort of generic fantasy theme or similar themes to that. And actually that was, I saw an interview with Elizabeth Hargrave, the designer, that was part of her motivation for designing Wingspan, was that she really loved playing board games, but she was just a little fed up with not having a beautiful, nature-themed game to play. And so she designed Wingspan. I believe it has brought a lot of people into the hobby. It probably can be credited with the explosion of nature-themed games. I will be recording a video eventually to answer the question, are there too many nature-themed games? And my answer is no. You're probably not surprised to hear that, but I'm going to have numbers to back that up and everything. So anyway, I just think Wingspan deserves a lot of credit for sort of being a board game ambassador, bringing people into the hobby that may not have noticed board games before, or not been drawn a little further into hobby board gaming. So I just think it gets a lot of credit, should get a lot of credit for that. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the fact that as I was preparing to record this, there was a game announcement that came out that at first, I have to admit, I was like, is that real? And that is for Finspan. You may have heard about it. At first I thought maybe it was a parody or a joke, but it's not. It's real. It looks gorgeous. I am so excited for this game because in this game you are marine scientists exploring the ocean depths and, surveying the wildlife. I don't know too many things about it. I did watch a quick playthrough of a few turns that Jamie Stegmaier has up on his YouTube channel that's worth watching. But this comes out on January 22nd, so I will be watching closely for that, and if I can fit it into my budget, I will definitely be picking that up and playing it because I'm really excited for that one. So that's Finspan. And I will say one thing I noticed I was on the Stonemaier Games website, I don't know what the cutoff for this is, but there's a form or something that you can suggest additional fish species to be included in the game. I'm guessing there will be expansions similar to Wingspan that are probably geographical or maybe at different depths. I don't know. Anyway, it just looks fascinating, looks beautiful. I'm really excited about it, excited for the theme. And yeah. Okay, so that was number 1, Wingspan, and then a potential future number 1, Finspan. We'll see. All right, those were the sort of nature, science, animal-themed games that I played in the month of December. Now on to the crowdfunding section. It's very short this month. I backed one game in December, I'm happy to say, because I need to cut back a little bit. I think I went a little crazy in October and November. But what I backed was 52 Realms Adventures, so I won't talk too much about it. It's not channel relevant. However, what I do want to say is it is by the same design team that brought us Voyages and Waypoints and Aquamarine, and that is Matthew Dunstan and Rory Muldoon. So this is published by Postmark Games. It recently was on Kickstarter, and I haven't printed it yet. I think we got the notice that the files were available literally a week or two ago. Can't remember. Anyway, it looks like a lot of fun. If you're interested in seeing how this one plays, there's a really lovely playthrough on the Slicker Drips channel. If you've not explored his channel, I'll put a link to his 52 Realms playthrough down in the description. But this is a dungeon crawler, print and play. It plays on, I guess you print out, it looks like in the playthrough you print out two sheets, one sheet that'll have your character on it and one sheet that will have your dungeon map. And there's 2 maps available so far. It sounded like there was going to be more maps in the future, but the dungeon is pretty extensive. I'll pop up a little picture. And instead of rolling dice for this one like you do in all the other ones, here you have to bring a deck of cards with you. So you don't print the cards, you have your own deck of cards. So hopefully you have a deck of cards. And it's a card-driven game, kind of like, I don't know what to compare it to because I haven't played it, and I didn't watch the entire playthrough. I was working while I was watching that in the background, so I didn't pay very close attention to the details. However, I'm really excited to play it. I'll probably get to it before the end of January, so I'll probably be talking about it in the next vlog. And that is 52 Realms Adventures, backed on Kickstarter for around $5. Pretty good. Oh, I should have said it's one player. It's a solo game. It plays in 10 to 20 minutes. And there's only 69 ratings on Board Game Geek so far, but the average rating right now is a 7.9. So those will all be Kickstarter backers, I think. I'm not sure if it's available on their website yet, but if it's not, it should be soon. Anyway, that was 52 Realms Adventures. Other stuff, it's labeled literally other stuff. Coming sometime in January, I am going to do a top 10 solo games, so I better get to work on that because we're almost halfway through January now. There are a few more games that I kind of want to play before I make that list, but if I don't get to them, I don't, and I'll still do the top 10 solo games. I haven't quite figured out if I'm going to limit it to nature-themed games or maybe have the top 10 be all nature-themed games and then have a couple honorable mentions that aren't, because certainly there are games like Obsession that I love playing solo that definitely are not channel relevant. Anyway, you can look out for that sometime in January. Like I said, no playthrough of Weather Machine until I get a better camera. That's unfortunate. I'm so sad about that. What else? Oh, enough people responded to my query from the last vlog that they thought it would be interesting for me to talk about the nature-themed games that were in the People's Choice Top 200. So look for that. That'll probably be in February. I am toying with the idea of doing a top 10 new to me games from 2024. I forgot to bring over my little notes that I've scribbled about how many games and how many were new to me, but there's enough that were new to me that I feel like I could do a top 10 list. It won't be a top 10 published in 2024 because I think I've only played around a dozen of those games. So it'll be just games that were new to me in 2024. All right, so keep your eye out for that. Channel update, we are up to 475 subscribers. We are almost to the magic number of 500, so just 25 more subscribers to go. It would be awesome if we could get there before the channel anniversary on Darwin's birthday in February 12th. So please, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. And other than that, I just want to say a great big thank you. Thank you especially to those of you who have stuck around through my little lull in content for the past couple months. I haven't been very consistent for a couple months, but I should be able to be more consistent from here on out. Once this it's going to take me a little while to edit this and get it up. So thank you. Thank you for sticking with me, and especially for my Patreon supporters. Thank you for sticking with me. I really appreciate you. I especially also appreciate people who consistently comment on the videos. So a shout out to Steve and Elaine and Jen and I don't know how to say it, Esco. I don't know what their actual name is. And there's a few others, but I just want to thank you guys so much for commenting on the videos consistently and letting me know what you enjoyed and letting me know little insight into your gaming life. Is so fun to read and interact with you guys through the comments on the videos. So keep it up. And, you know, come join us in the Discord. That would be really fun. Anyway, so thank you for that. If you liked this video, I hope that you will consider giving it a thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. And other than that, that's all I have for you. I will see you in the next one. Bye.